that piece of communication is to achieve in terms of its objective. I've just bashed the mic. That's rather unfortunate, isn't it?
What did you want that piece of communication to achieve, Jo? Was that emphasis? You've spent a lot of time recently actually in focus groups with Deskless workers working on EVP for one of our clients, right? And I think, the information, the stories they've got to share are gold dust, and they are very, very much kind of the core of the organisation. But B, they very often do feel voiceless because of the roles that they play. So making sure they have got a voice is part of that. Welcome to the Deep Sea Dive, the podcast where we talk all things change, communications, culture, and coaching and leadership development. I am Lorna Leeson, and this is
Lottie.
And this is
Jo Moffatt.
Welcome, Jo Moffatt.
Does Jo Moffatt need an introduction, another introduction?
Well, Jo Moffatt, I've been told, needs no introduction, and I am inclined to agree.
Well, I'll give you a little one.
Yes,
which
please.
is to say I'm really pleased to be here. Thank you for asking me. And I sit on the Seven Seas Culture Consultancies Advisory Board. I'm very pleased to be a part of that.
You do.
And was part of the forerunner, which was Woodreed.
Part of the forerunner.
Just
a little tiny bit part of the forerunner, or the founder and managing director for over 30 years. Which one?
Well, the latter, but not on my own, obviously, because I was supported by a considerable team of wonderful people, wasn't I?
You were, and yet there would be no Woodreed without you, and there definitely would be no Seven Seas without Woodreed, and therefore without you.
Well, thank you. So it's a pleasure to be here.
The reason we are here is because Jo walked before us, I would say. And we are here talking about something that is something that Woodreed had plenty of experience in, definite bread and butter of the Woodreed expertise, and something that we're very passionate about from a Seven Seas point of view, and I think continue to kind of hold a bit of a torch for, don't we?
Well, yeah, which is how you navigate frontline communication, essentially.
Or, as you named this in the notes, reaching the unreachable.
Is it a bit dramatic?
Reaching the unreachable. And you may as well get a Ouija board for communicating with deskless workers, for all the good some organisations do with it, right?
Absolutely right. And it's a nut that's still to be cracked. It's something that people are still endlessly muddling through.
Or just ignoring.
They don't really count, though, do they?
But because
they're only 80% of the workforce, right? So who cares? Who cares whether they're engaged?
So people who do not sit at a desk with a computer day in, day out, let's be really clear, right? Who are out and about doing other jobs, some might say proper jobs, and they make up, as you just said, 80% of the UK workforce or the global workforce. Yeah. The majority of us do not sit behind desks to do our work. And yet, particularly what we find in organisations, the people who are in charge of communicating with employees tend to rely on email channels that need a desktop or a laptop of some sort in front of you.
Essentially just leaving them in the dark.
Yeah, and I would add to that group of people, though, and I think this is a lesson that we all began to learn during and post-COVID, and it's a lesson we shouldn't forget, is that actually there's also within your unreachables, there's those people who are temporarily unreachable, people that might be on maternity leave, paternity leave, long-term sick leave, caring responsibilities. They equally need to be thought of in a kind of intentional manner.
Yeah.
And a lot of the basic premise and underpinning principles that we talk about equally as well apply to that group of people as well. And you know what?
And we know that it's a really tough gig to get right, yeah? We're living in a world of absolute information overload anyway, where messages are struggling to get through, even with the best will in the world, to people who are connected to technology within organisations.
Yeah.
So I think it's going back to your point earlier, Lorna. It's not necessarily even that it's a tough nut to crack, it's that people don't even want to have a go at the nut, right?
It goes into the too hard bucket, so we'll just send an email. Yeah. I think. Too often it goes into the too hard bucket, so we'll just send an email. And there's almost an unspoken assumption that we're sort of paying people, therefore it's their job to go sifting out the information that we're broadcasting out to them. No matter how hard it is, which goes completely against our shared principle, which one of the things that I loved when I first started working with Woodreed which is this idea of meeting people where they are, which has been a bit of a mantra of mine, having worked in jobs where more than 80% of the people we were communicating with were not in front of a laptop or a
This whole
desktop.
idea is we will create an intranet, therefore they will come. We will put some corporate information up onto the intranet, and they will make a pilgrimage. They will make a pilgrimage towards the light of the corporate information.
They will flock in their thousands. They will flock in their thousands.
But we laugh, but it's genuinely what we find people do.
Yeah.
Right. So what do we mean? Laura, explain. I think let's explain for our listeners. When you talk about meeting people where they are, I think it's our number one rule. What do you mean by that? What do we mean by that?
Okay. I mean, there's two ways of thinking about this, and I want organisations to think about both. So what I mean about it and we mean about it is, first of all, find out where people are already sharing information and go there. So if where they're sharing information is informally in team meetings, in the staff room, catch-ups around the water cooler, that's where you go. I used to work in an organisation that had thousands and thousands of lorry drivers, and they had WhatsApp groups and they had CB radios back in the day. That was how they communicated. If we could get information to one of them and they were on that network, we were meeting them where they were. So don't try and build something that is not where people are, which is back to your intranet thing, right? If people aren't there already, don't create it and try, because then you've got this like meta communications challenge of creating a communications channel that people aren't on and then trying to engage them to be on the stupid communications channel that you just created. So that's the first thing. Physically meet them where they are. And then this is a principle that has been a Woodreed kind of in the blood of Woodreed for years and years and years, even before Seven Seas was a glimmer in Charlotte's eye, is this idea of emotionally meeting them where they are. Right, so really understanding your audience.
Well, exactly. It comes back to one of our principles, doesn't it? This whole idea of treating your employees like you would treat your customers, right? Which means looking at them with the same level of audience insight that you apply to your consumer marketing, right? And again, it never ceases to amaze me the fact that people working internally don't seem to latch on to everything that we've learned about consumer marketing, which is choose the right channels, understand your audience, meet them where they are physically through channels and emotionally through understanding their headspace.
And being very clear about what you actually want that piece of communications to achieve in terms of its objective. I've just bashed the mic. That's rather unfortunate, isn't it?
What did you want that piece of communication to achieve, Jo? Was that emphasis?
Exactly that, Lorna. Exactly that.
Let's retrofit the explanation. We're good at that.
Marvellous. Thank you for that. Saved me there. What do we want that piece of communication to achieve? What is our objective? What do we want our audience to think, to feel, coming back to the emotional engagement, and do? And also being realistic about what can realistically be achieved. We can't change the world, and in one piece of communication, it's about taking relevant small steps that you need to do, not trying to do everything in one fell swoop.
Well, and I think that's the other thing that happens when we get the intranet or the email as our solution, right? We then put everything into one communication where somebody who's literally got 2 minutes in between shifts to go for a wee, have something to eat, phone home and also read whatever something is coming out at them. Are you given them one client who we love dearly but will remain nameless created something a few years ago called the 3-minute read, which then, because people kind of bolt on and add and keep going, it becomes a lot longer than that. And in reality, people haven't got that long to, particularly people who aren't at desks. And even people who are at desks are overwhelmed by written communication.
To be fair, it did then become the 3 minutes read of headlines.
But I think, again, your starting point has to be, what does my audience need to know, not what I want to tell them.
Exactly.
Right? And too often, communicators internally forget that fundamental principle, right? Keep it clear, keep it concise, be absolutely single-minded in the idea that you want to communicate. What do I want them to think? What do I want them to feel? And what do I want them to do? and don't overload them.
And use the right channel. If you've got something complex that requires thought or dialogue, or it's got nuance, then probably a piece of written communication isn't the thing that's going to do it. That probably is something where you need to have dialogue. Focus groups, maybe it's a piece to camera from somebody, who's leading. People have got time to listen to somebody talk, because we've got limited channels in a lot of organisations, and some of them are quicker than others, right, to actually get something done, tick it off the list. We then end up writing an epic list of stuff that we want to tell people, and nobody reads any of it.
Exactly, and let's not forget the absolutely fundamental role of the line manager in all of this. We know that all the research tells us that the line manager is the most trusted source of information for frontline deskless workers, right? And so we've seen this with clients, particularly with one of our NHS clients who's absolutely just smashed their staff survey response rates. What when we were working with them on this, impressed upon them was how fundamental getting line manager engagement into why this was important and what their role was, and very clearly what they needed to do. Just get that communication right and encourage those line managers to disseminate that information. And you're kind of there, aren't you?
So a line manager is probably also deskless, right? So needs that kind of tools to communicate whatever it is you're asking them to communicate as easily as possible. And we know that line managers are one of the most trusted sources of information for people in organisations.
Yeah, but we also know they're one of the most hard pressed. That kind of squeezed jam in the middle of the sandwich.
Yeah.
So again, just coming back to those rules, keep it simple, keep it focused, be clear and single-minded about what it is you're trying to get them to do, because they're not just disseminating, they're not just cascading. Very often they're translating, they're interpreting. And if they're
answering questions.
Yes, and if they're a really good manager who knows their team well, they're also thinking, how are they going to respond to this? How can I frame this in such a way that they'll get it and understand it and engage with it too? So they're interpreting it.
Yeah, and that's something that we did with this NHS client. And actually, when I was a client of Woodreed way back when, using line managers, one of the things that you really supported me to do. And it's not just a case of giving them communication for themselves to use in a way that's, easily digestible and translatable for them. It's actually using that insight. They are closest to the workforce. So they will tell you that won't land. That doesn't make sense. People aren't interested in this. This is what they really want. This is what they're really thinking. Yeah. And I think you ignore that or disregard it or don't take the benefit of it at your peril, right? So, I think...
Don't assume you've got all the answers.
Well, not from the ivory tower, for goodness sake.
Absolutely
no.
not. Absolutely. And then the other thing I'd say as well is that you need to, we've always said this, and we know how important this is, but you've got to try and think about how can you facilitate that communication coming in both directions and coming back up. The extent to which employee audiences feel that they are listened to and that it's not just a one direction.
And this is why I don't call them audiences. And I know that it's a very typical kind of marketing term, but I'm having not been from a marketing background. To me, an audience is a passive term. And then employees aren't passive.
Very definitely not.
That dialogue is so important.
Yeah. So the extent to which employees feel that they are listened to, heard, treated as adults, so that they know that not every suggestion is going to make the grade, but that they are involved, that they are part of finding the solution. And there's some really fascinating research that Engage for Success have just done their 2025 report into employee engagement in the UK, and what they looked at was the difference between organisations where employee voice was deemed to be actively solicited and listened to, and the impact that had on overall employee engagement in that organisation. And it's significant difference.
Really?
Something like 82% engagement versus the UK norm of 65 in organisations where employee engagement is actively listened to.
82% versus the norm of 65 if you've got real
and
active employee voice.
Got active employee voice, it's down in the 40s.
You've spent a lot of time recently actually in focus groups with deskless workers working on EVP for one of our clients, right? And I think the information, the stories they've got to share are gold dust, and they are very, very much kind of the core of the organisation. But B, they very often do feel voiceless because of the roles that they play. So making sure they have got a voice is part of that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's been a really rewarding experience, actually. It's been blooming hard work, but it's been really, really rewarding. And what I've heard and what I've absorbed and what I've learned is that whether it be line managers, people managers, or whether it be people in non-management roles, a real desire to be part of this project, be involved and have their voice heard and to tell some stories. And you know, when I say to them, have you got a story to illustrate that? Oh, yeah.
And that leads me on really nicely to a point that I wanted to make. And it's the idea of using employees as the mouthpiece for organisation. So the absolute complete polar opposite of corporate messaging coming down in a way that feels inauthentic versus allowing the people who work in an organisation to tell the stories of the organisation in their own words.
Yeah, because I mean they are the lived brand and employee value proposition. They are the the
culture.
If you're listening to that and thinking, oh gosh, that sounds a bit dangerous, then I would say the words that we often say, which is say do gap. You know, I think if you truly believe that you've got an authentic lived culture, values, behaviours, then it's not rocket science to then let your people be the voice of that organisation. Can I say one more thing before we wrap? Because we're getting, I think, fairly close to time, which is, it's a very boring, prosaic thing, but actually...
It will never be boring and prosaic if it's coming from you.
Shall I put the Christmas tinsel hat back on to make it even more exciting? Get that hat back on. I've got the scars from having worked in and run internal comms from these kinds of organisations where you've got lots and lots of deskless workers. And if you haven't got the infrastructure right, if you treat communicating to employees like an administrative task that somebody just does, and you haven't got the infrastructure right, you will fall on your sword. So if you don't know who your employees are and how they differ, if you haven't got that data in terms of, you spoke about that earlier on, Jo, and if you therefore don't know how you're going to reach them, you'll hit a roadblock at some point. So if you don't know, we've got, X number of people who drive and X number of people personas. who it's personas and it's employee insight. If you haven't got employee insight, which is the boring realm of, IT or HRIT departments.
Then make it your business to go and get it.
Yeah. And then there's the other thing about this, and we talk about all functions of an organisation being guardians of culture. Very often we deal with organisations where they really want to meet somebody. They've got a really clever way of wanting to meet people where they are, and they hit a roadblock in the form of, it might be IT limitations, it might be legal limitations, it might be other limitations. So this is a job that is not just about HR and comms, right? Meeting people where they are and communicating with deskless workers. It's the job of everybody in the organisation to recognise if they're the fuel of this organisation, all of us have got a role to play in making sure that they can be communicated with really, really well and effectively. It's no good IT saying you're going to have 27 different ways of logging in, and operations saying, well, there's no standard way of doing that. It's everyone's job, isn't it? It's not HR and comms' problem. It's everyone's problem.
And everyone has got the solution. Or can contribute towards the solution, rather.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well said, Lorna.
So keep it clear and concise, audience insight at the heart, make it two-way.
Yeah.
Keep it relevant.
Make it three-way, actually. Make it lateral as well amongst employees. We're doing a beautiful piece of work that's going to build on what Jo's been doing, which is creating connections between employees with communication, not just up and down.
Yeah. Keep it regular, keep it authentic. And be agile. If something's not working, give it a go. It's like our watchword of 25. Agile. Try something, doesn't work.
Move on.
Move on. Try something else.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Excellent.
Thank you, Jo. I know there's so much more you could go into this topic.
Yeah, well, it's been fun. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you very much.